Hello there and welcome to another Classic Golf Clubs video. Today we're featuring a set of George Nicoll Henry Cotton irons from 1957.
Starting with the woods as usual then, and first up we've got a Wilson wood from their very popular range endorsed by a player that had one of the prettiest and most effective swings ever in my opinion, and that was of course Sam Snead. So this is a Wilson Sam Snead. It's a 2 wood actually, this one. So have a look on the sole there. We can see Wilson, swing weight. First thing to notice is that it's a laminated head. And for the date on this one, that's quite an early laminate. If we look at the shaft, we can see that there's quite a bit of corrosion and wear on this one. Although the actual steel itself looks in pretty good condition, so I'm not worried about playing it. Attractive face, black, white, black with 4 screws. The shaft band, if we have a look at the shaft band, it's a true temper dynamic, and I think this came out, it was in production between I think 1942 and 54. The grip, I'm pretty sure this is an original grip. It's a leather grip, so it's survived remarkably well. We've got the grip collar on there, and on the end we can see the reminder edge that Wilson used to use on a lot of their clubs at this time. It was eventually made illegal, bit of a shame really. But there we are, and it says the reminder. We've got the Wilson flags there and a patent number. So all in all, very nice club. And here are the irons. And these are the clubs that are leading us to the feature subject in this video, which is Henry Cotton. We can see there people that have watched a few of these videos before or are familiar with some of the older UK brands will recognise the Hand of Friendship cleat mark and the Nicoll name, which is George Nicoll of Scotland. Henry Cotton is the model. I'll talk about Henry Cotton, as I say, in more detail, and I'll put this particular club in the timeline because Nicoll's produced a lot of Henry Cotton endorsed clubs. So let's have a look at these. Nice simple blade design, weight concentrated at the bottom, a bit of a ridge or a groove down the top line there, which gives us a thinner top line, straightforward lined face with a couple of lines at the end boxing in. Unusual ferrule, the colour wise, black with 2 orange bands. On the sole we've got rustless and made in Scotland, and this is the 6 iron. The shaft band, not very easy to see, but it's a true temper rocket shaft which was in production I believe around 1954 to 1959. The grips on these, I think these have been replaced, as I'll explain in a moment, but they are very sort of period grips. The grips are Golf Pride, fine line, and they're a patent number there as well. They're in very poor condition, but I'm a bit loath to change them because it's an unusual style. The sort of, I presume it was white once, but it's now a very dull cream. Pro only, with a bit of a V there. The original grip ferrule there, and I think these have been replaced because if we look at the 2 iron, which I assume came with the same set, it's also got a true temper rocket shaft, but the grip on this one with the same ferrule is a leather grip, and this is what I assume was the original grip. So that's how I suspect that these clubs would have originally looked. The set itself comprises 2, as we've just seen there, through to the 10. 10 irons were fairly common at one time. Really it's the pitching wedge for the set, and I think this one measures 51 degrees. This set came out in 1957, that's quite an old set. So that's the irons. As I say, we only go up to the 10, so I need a sand iron, and for that I've chosen a similar dated club. This is 1961 that this was released. Slazenger Gary Player sand iron. Featured this before, so I won't go into any detail on that one. And here's the putter, one that I think I've featured before, the Ben Sayers Benny mallet. It's called a mallet because it's got this heel section on there. Handmade in Scotland, and as I've said before, the Benny putter was produced over a very long time period. I don't know exactly when this one was made, but let's hope it's somewhere around the time that the George Nicoll Henry Cotton irons were produced. I would guess it's probably more likely 1960s. That's the putter.
That's the clubs covered then. Time now to look at Henry Cotton. Henry Cotton arrived on the scene at a period when British golf was at a very low ebb. His arrival was relatively low-key, but his later success was greeted with huge enthusiasm, and his place in golfing history was secured. Before relating some of the highlights of his career, it would be worth setting the stage onto which he burst. Up until 1914, the Open had always been won by a Briton, apart from 1907 when it was won by Frenchman Arnaud Massey. After 1914, the Open wasn't held again due to World War I until 1920, when it was won by Scotsman George Duncan. But this was a short continuation of British dominance, as the very next year it was won by Jock Hutchison, who, although born in Scotland, had become a US citizen. This marked the beginning of a period of American dominance of the Open, where 12 of 13 Opens were won by an American or a golfer resident in and representing America. If we look at the situation in both countries at the time, it's not really surprising. In Britain, professional golfers at this time were regarded as tradesmen without even access to the very clubhouses where they worked, and their status was low. There was only a fledgling professional circuit, and most pros concentrated on their club work. In America, the country was booming, and a professional tour was already in place, where many pros made their living and became famous and respected. Back to our hero then. Thomas Henry Cotton, born January 26, 1907, in Holmes Chapel, Cheshire, England. Henry and his elder brother Leslie were encouraged by their father, who was a keen but undistinguished golfer himself, to play golf, and Leslie and Henry joined the Aquarius Golf Club in Honor Oak in 1920, and within a few years they'd both won several prizes. Their father set up training nets in the garden of their family home, which were used assiduously by the two brothers. Henry left school at 16 and became assistant at Fulwell in 1923 under George Oak. From there he moved to Rye under Alex Simpson, and in 1926 moved to Langley Park as professional, where he remained until 1932. Henry Cotton was always keen on competition golf. In 1925 he travelled to Scotland to try and qualify for the Open, but he was 9 shots away from the qualifying mark of 156. He qualified for the 1927 Open and finished a creditable 9th, and after a successful 1928, including runner-up in the News of the World and 18th place in the Open, he proved his determination to succeed in golf by deciding that the time was right for him to travel to America to try and improve his golf. Those conquering American players had greatly impressed him. He left for America in November 1928, aged 21, with £300, determined to play as much of the American winter circuit as he could until his money ran out. Once in America, he quickly met Tommy Armour, one of the big stars in America at the time, who took him under his wing and gave him much advice and help, for which Henry was very grateful. In his first competition, he finished 3rd and won £80 for an encouraging start. However, Cotton's general play was shorter than that of his competitors, and Tommy Armour soon pointed out that this was because he faded the ball in the English tradition, rather than using the draw which had become so prevalent in America. But Henry practiced long and hard and soon began to develop the desired draw. He'd also seen that good money could be made from golf, and he saw no reason that he couldn't do as well as the Americans did in this regard. Back home in Britain, the hard work and new shot shape quickly started to show good results. A win in the 1930 Belgian Open, back-to-back wins in the Dunlop Southport tournament in 1931 and 32, and the News of the World Match Play tournament in 1932. From 1930, his results in the Open showed consistent form: 8th in 1930, 10th in 31 and 32, and 7th in 1933. And then came the win that set the seal on his competitive career, the 1934 Open at Royal St George's, which he won by 5 strokes. He started with a 67 to lead by 3, but followed this up with a blistering 65 to set a new Open record and lead by 9 shots. Conditions were tougher for the third round, but a steady 72 saw him extend his lead to 10 shots. There was still time for drama though, as nerves got to Cotton and a challenge from South African Sid Bruce. But Cotton held his nerve over the closing holes to win by 5 shots. The win was a big shot in the arm for British golf, which had seen its reputation sink and was greeted with much cheer by the British public. Cotton won the Open again in 1937 against a strong field including all the Americans who played in that year's Ryder Cup. In 1948, Cotton won his last Open against a field that had a limited representation from America, but Cotton took the lead after the second round with an excellent 66 and never relinquished it to win by 5 strokes. Henry Cotton's Open record during this period is mightily impressive. From 1930 until 1952, his worst finish was 13th, and this was the only time that he was outside the top 10. He also played in the Ryder Cup in 1929, 1937 and 1947, and he captained the team in 1947 and 1953. Henry Cotton helped to change the status of the professional golfer in Great Britain in much the same way that Walter Hagen did in America. Cotton's upbringing had been more privileged than most professionals of the time, and he was able to use his public school education, together with his exceptional play, to show a new breed of professional. Vanity Fair once described Cotton as something of a Beau Brummel on the links. His motto was, "To be a champion, you must act like one." When attending tournaments in Britain, Cotton and his partner, and later his wife, fellow golfer Isabel Estangue Toots Moss, would arrive in a very impressive Mercedes motorcar with a picnic in a Fortnum & Mason hamper. The picnic was actually a necessity. As a professional, he would have been barred from club restaurants where only members and their guests would be allowed. Henry Cotton's career wasn't limited to just club work and competition. In December 1938, he was booked to headline in a music hall show at the Coliseum, set up by a friend in the entertainment industry. With no idea with what he was going to actually do, he quickly came up with an introductory script and a routine using specially painted shoes, clubs, gloves and balls that glowed brightly under the right lighting. The routine illustrated the most common faults in golf and how to correct them, and finished with Henry hitting soft balls into the audience. The opening performance went well and continued to do so over the coming nights. Henry was asked to extend his week and in the end played 14 weeks at several venues across the country. Henry Cotton retired from competitive golf in the early 1950s and became a journalist and wrote several books, one of which I've found a lot of the information given in this video, and that's called This Game of Golf by Henry Cotton. He also ventured into course design with a string of courses mainly in Portugal, Spain and the UK. He set up a teaching school in Penina, Portugal, where he emphasised his belief in the use of the hands in the golf swing, with his famous, or infamous, depending on your viewpoint, tyre hitting drill, designed to build strength in the hands and wrists and to emphasise their role in the swing. He was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 1980. In 1987, he accepted a knighthood, but unfortunately died before the ceremony. Returning to Henry Cotton's 1934 Open win, his sensational second round of 65 gave birth to one of the most famous golf balls in the history of the game, the Dunlop 65. This ball was Dunlop's premium offering for many years. It was played and promoted not just by Henry Cotton, but by many of the leading golfers over the subsequent years, as can be seen here. From the golf ball that he inspired, we move seamlessly into the golf clubs that he endorsed. Henry Cotton is most associated with George Nicoll, but before that he had an agreement with Spalding, so we'll start with one of the irons from Spalding bearing his name. This is the only Spalding Henry Cotton club that I've seen, so let's move quickly on to the more familiar George Nicoll Henry Cotton range. I believe that the Nicoll-Cotton agreement started in 1950 and that this is the first club bearing his name, produced in 1950 or 51. Then from 1953 we have this model. And I've also seen this very similar model but stamped British Lady on the sole. From 1957, the club featured in this video. And from 1958 comes this model. The very similar looking Aristocrat model of 1962. And from 1965, the Cotton Plus with arc sole. The Cotton Extra from 1966. And the grandly named Majestic from 1968. The equally grand Royale from 1971. The first cavity back design, the SL9, released in 1974. And the even more futuristic looking Click Pro Balance, released in 1976. And finally, the more traditional Cavalier from 1978. Well, that just leaves me to show you the lofts from the featured set. These are very close to my ideal lofts for irons, all within 1 degree, apart from the 9 iron, which is 2 degrees out, so I can't really complain. And I hope you'll join me for part 2 when I play these clubs on the course. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you next time. Bye.